All right, so today I wanted to wrap up some really crucial concepts in the world of Neanderthal studies. You've become quite well acquainted now, I hope, with a variety of aspects of Neanderthal life. You have an idea of their subsistence behavior. You have a familiarity with their anatomical structures. You have some idea of their cultural characteristics, what went on in their minds, and how that played out in their cultural behavior, in their activities, their daily life, perhaps even some hints at what we would call symbolism. Well, what do we get with all of that? You've got this complex hominid. It is human in some ways, perhaps not quite human in other ways. We looked at what behavioral modernity was, and this is one of the really important things about Neanderthals in the first place. Why study them? Well, one reason is that they are a good comparison, or a good hominid to look at, that in order to learn more about what modernity is. Again, they're very much like human being in many ways, but there is something quite significant missing in the cognition, as you've learned. So we've got this hominid, and it becomes extinct, and that is quite clear. You saw the genetic material suggesting that no significant amount of Neanderthal DNA remains in modern populations. So whether there was some variety of interbreeding with hominids or with AMHss that arrived from Europe, perhaps in some areas there was some interbreeding and in some areas there wasn't, but ultimately they become extinct. We don't see Neanderthal characteristics widespread and very visible at all in modern humans. So they become extinct. Well, why is that? It doesn't appear to be a physiological difference. That is, it doesn't appear to be that Neanderthals suddenly became physically maladapted to their environments. It is probably something to do with the cognitive abilities of AMHss that comes along. Okay, that's a new discovery, and something new that anthropology has been able to nail down in the last 100 or so years of thinking about Neanderthals and what they were. What they were, as you know, is a late, possibly cold-adapted late variety of Homo erectus that moves into Europe somewhere on the order of 300,000 years ago, evolves along just fine up until the arrival of modern humans coming out of Africa, something on the order of 50,000 years ago, infiltrating into Europe and then replacing the Neanderthals. So they go away. Why is that? Well, it has to do something with the mind of the modern humans that arrived from Africa. And generally speaking, we call that new characteristic or new possibilities, new mind. We call that, generally speaking, intelligence. But that is a crude word. What kind of intelligence? For example, with the article for Scientific American Mind, you saw that we can break down intelligence into modules or domains, as Stephen Meithen points out. There is a distinction, a real distinction in the mind of humans between technical intelligence, linguistic intelligence, social intelligence, and what he called natural history intelligence. Well, okay, now we're starting to be able to even tease apart and more clearly define what do we mean by intelligence. How is it that intelligence imparts greater fitness? Somebody was pointing out recently that intelligence, high intelligence that we have, has only actually evolved once in the many billions of years of life on this planet and the many billions of life forms. So you can seriously ask, what is it about intelligence? Now that we understand a little bit more about what intelligence is, what is it about intelligence that actually is selected for? What is its evolutionary advantage? Well, I think it goes right back to some central concepts in anthropology and some central concepts in regard to essentially what it is to be human. You remember that in biology, the evolution works on the principle that variations are what are selected upon, and in biological evolution, parent generations have offspring. Those offspring are variable. They're not clones. They're not identical. And the selection is the fact that some of them are well equipped for their environment and they propagate the genes that made them, and so on. There is a parallel, and this is critically important. there is a parallel evolving information system that is not genetic, it is cultural. All of the instructions, you remember the decoupling of behavior from anatomy, all the instructions for survival as a Neanderthal or as a modern hominid is cultural information. It rides physically in the brain, and it is communicated, not physically, it doesn't get into our genes, but it is communicated from one generation to the next, and among peers of any given generation. It's communicated socially, vocally in our case with language. All of that information is essentially, that information, the rules, the cultural rules, that in the cultural evolution system, that is the unit of evolution or the unit of transmission in cultural evolution, just as the gene is the unit of transmission in biological evolution. And so we have a parallel evolution of cultural and biological information. In the biological system, it is the genes that are replicated. In the cultural system, it is the memes. Richard Dawkins coined this term in 1976. A meme is the analog or the equivalent, the unit of transmission analogous to the gene. The unit of transmission in cultural evolution that is analogous to the gene in biological evolution. Now, memes, you can say that a culture constitutes all that behavioral instructions that compose our culture. That is composed of units or bits. Those are memes. Those are ideas. Now, of course, those are transmitted. They are replicated from one generation to the next. When I raise a child, let's say, or enculturate a child, tell that child how to act in certain situations, cultural and social and physical situations, when I instruct them things, I am replicating the information. That's biological, that's cultural replication of information. And then, of course, there is selection. You don't tell your offspring everything that you were told. You vary the things. Things change. Culture changes. And essentially then you have variation. And this results in humans being highly variable. We are not interchangeable. We have unique identities. We give ourselves names. We have enormously unique identities in even our psychology and our history.